With Dexter Lawrence having reportedly requested a trade, let's explore the best landing spots for him and what the New York Giants could potentially get in return.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and on this mini episode, Dexter Lawrence reportedly wants out of New York after reaching a contract impasse. So, what teams might make the best sense for him, and what could the Giants potentially get that makes the best sense for them? So, that's what we're going to discuss today. We have three teams that could make sense for the New York Giants and who could conceivably pull off such a trade to varying degrees, but we'll see which ones are the best fit and which of the three I like. And to spoiler alert, if you watched the main show, we had a couple of offers from the Saints and from the Chargers. None of those are included in these three. So let's get right into it. Okay. So this team that I'm going to mention first doesn't have a whole lot of cap space. In fact, they have the least amount of cap space in the NFL as of this recording. And I'm talking about the Chicago Bears. But the Chicago Bears, interestingly enough, tried to acquire Max Crosby from the Las Vegas Raiders. So they apparently were willing to move money around to make that trade happen. Now, the Chicago Bears, their first round pick is at number 25. That's not a bad pick to give up because, as I've been saying on this show, and as we've heard from guests on this show who covered the draft this year, there's maybe 12 or 13 legitimate first round blue chip players. So once you get past, like 14 in the draft order, now you're talking guys who are technically second round grades, but because there's 32 first round slots, some of those guys are going to go in the first round. So if you're the Giants and you're trying to work out a deal with the Chicago Bears, that could make some sense if Chicago's willing to move money around. Because, if you ask them for pick number 25, it's not like Chicago's given up a great value there. And the Giants, more importantly, can use that pick to get, another quality player or a player that can help them. And spoiler alert, in the second part of this show, I'm going to tell you which player I think could potentially replace Dexter Lawrence. Okay, the next team, and this is the team that, if I'm being honest with you, this is the team that I really like for a potential trade partner with the Giants. And that is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars have three picks in the third round, picks number 81, 88, and 100. I am fairly certain that they could give away one of those picks. All right. If you're the Giants, maybe, if you try and work out a deal with them, maybe you say, hey, I want the highest of those three picks. So what the Jaguars could potentially offer that would make sense, a third round pick this year and either a first round next year, or how about throwing in a player? And a player that I have in mind, Brian Thomas Jr., the wide receiver. Now, this is a guy who, remember, in the past has been linked to the Giants in trade rumors, but it has never come down. So the Jaguars are maybe looking to move on from Brian Thomas Jr. and the Giants, who just so happen to need a complement opposite of Malik Neighbors. Maybe you say, hey, give us a third rounder, give us Brian Thomas Jr., we'll send you Dexter Lawrence and have at it, So maybe that makes sense for the Giants. I kind of like that scenario. I don't know if Jacksonville would go for it, but I kind of like that scenario a lot. I think it makes too much sense for the Giants. Okay. Also with Brian Thomas Jr., remember, he is signed through 2027 and he's not costing a whole lot. So the deal, that type of deal to me just makes way too much sense for the Giants. If, again, the Jaguars are interested in trading for Dexter Lawrence, and if the Giants are interested in trading Dexter Lawrence. All right, now the last team I'm going to mention, and this is kind of obvious, but hear me out on it. The Tennessee Titans. Now, the Tennessee Titans, aka the Tennessee Giants, because a lot of Giant players have, followed former head coach Brian Dable down to Tennessee. Dable now the offensive coordinator. Dexter Lawrence was a guy that was one of Brian Dable's guys, and rightfully so. Star player, but more importantly, Dable, when he was the head coach here, kind of babied Dexter Lawrence a little bit, just kind of backed off of him in last summer, if you remember, because Dex was coming off the elbow injury. So he didn't really practice him a whole lot in team drills, didn't play him a whole lot in the, the preseason. And Dexter, as a result, never really got into ideal football shape to start the year, which is kind of contributed to his down year, I think. So even though Brian Dable is not the head coach, he's already had a pretty heavy influence over the personnel that's been brought into Tennessee. So who's to say that he wouldn't go to Robert Saleh, the head coach, and say, hey, Dexter could really boost up our defensive line, put him next to Jeffrey Simmons, and we're cooking with gas here. And oh, by the way, the Titans have the most cap space available. So they wanted to make this happen, they could do so. And, the Giants, as far as what they could ask for, well, they could start with pick number 35 to start, which is a second rounder. All right. And then maybe, I don't know, ask for a first rounder in 2027, or, another player to be not a player, another draft pick at some point in 2027, because you want to get at least two players and or picks for Dexter Lawrence. You're not going to just send him down and get a second round pick in return. It's not going to happen. So the Titans, I could see that maybe being the second best scenario of these three. I think the Bears would be more of a long shot, but of the three that I presented to you, I really like the Jacksonville Jaguars one the best, because it solves a need. It opens up, cap space. It gets the Giants a receiver. And it just, to me, makes too much sense. All right. Now, assuming the Giants were to trade Dexter Lawrence, how would they replace him? Well, obviously, they would have to go to the draft. And I've got a specific player in mind that I'm going to tell you about right after this. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now, and it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean that you failed. Sometimes it just means that you haven't had the right kind of support. The stress that comes with trying to figure out everything on your own, the expectations you feel you have everything together, and how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Hey, Giant fans, the off-season doesn't exist for the Everydayer Club. Join the group chat to talk Big Blue year-round and get every episode of the show ad-free. Head to lockedonnygiants.supercast.com or hit the link in the show notes for more information or to join. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in America. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We're talking Dexter Lawrence, we're talking trade, and we're talking now replacement for Dexter Lawrence. Now, look, Dexter Lawrence is not easily replaceable. You're not going to find another Dexter Lawrence out there. But if you're the Giants and you're looking to add to your defensive line, there is a prospect that maybe, if you're able to pick up another, like, for example, a pick late in the first round for Dexter, this is a guy that I'm going to give you that I think could maybe help your defensive line. All right. And that guy is Clemson defensive lineman Peter Woods. Peter Woods is 6'2.5", 298 pounds. So he's a little light, okay? He's not the 340 pounder that Dexter Lawrence is. But Peter Woods is also not a true nose tackle. He's a versatile defensive lineman. You can line him up in the A gap, the B gap. You can put him at the 3, the 1. You can line him up anywhere. He is a guy who can collapse the pocket, who can who's explosive. He gives you a little something on the pass rush. According to Pro Football Focus, Peter Woods had 54 quarterback pressures, made 61 stops over his 3-year career, and he's a solid run defender. And what happens to be the Giants' weakness on defense? The run defense. So Peter Woods is a guy who can help you with all of that if you bring him on board. So that being said, you don't really have that true replacement for a nose tackle unless you pick somebody up along the line. So maybe you go with a Shelby Harris or, somebody at the back end of free agency. But Peter Woods would be a guy that I think would be intriguing. And he's actually someone who, forget who told me, but somebody told me that they were doing some work on him. They were, really looking into him and determining whether he would be a fit and whatnot. And, I was told that a lot of work was being done on Peter Woods. So it makes me wonder if that's the guy maybe they're eyeballing. Now, Peter Woods is projected to be like a late first round, second round type pick. So curious to see, again, if you trade Dexter Lawrence and you pick up an extra second rounder, if you pick up, a first round pick at the bottom of the round, maybe that's where you spend it to address a need. So that's a name to keep an eye on, and it's an intriguing name, So, we'll see if that's a guy that indeed lands on the Giants' radar. I don't know that Peter Woods has had a top 30 visit. I do think he had a combine meeting with the Giants, but shouldn't really read too much into that because that can mean anything at this point. So bottom line, folks, do I think Dexter Lawrence is going to be traded? Well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen before the draft. I still think at the end of the day, the two sides are going to reach some kind of agreement so that Dexter can finish out this contract. I know some of you in the YouTube comment sections have said, don't bother, trade him, let him move on. But Dexter Lawrence, I mean, he would be really hard to replace. And I don't think the Giants have a really good, solid nose tackle to back up right now that position if they were to lose him. And that would be a big hole on the defense. Something that down the line maybe they could replace with a younger player. But, for a team that's looking to win now and hit the ground running, I just think the best course of action is to just figure this out and go from there. All right, Gen fans, that's going to do it for this mini edition of Locked On Giants. Be sure to keep it here all week long. We're going to hear a recap on what John Harbaugh and the coordinators had to say. So that'll be on Wednesday. We've got 2 episodes of the Giants Squad Show this week, Tuesday at 4:00. And then I think the next one's going to be Friday at 1:00. So make sure you tune in for that. And we'll just keep on bringing you updates as we get them right here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So until next time, have a good one, everybody.